Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War if Goats Could Fly event, in which the new ultra rare troop of the Sky Goat is added to the game. So this week, we should be getting the new patch. Of course, it seemed like maybe last week it could happen, though it is pretty much guaranteed happening this week, as there's currently no Friday event plans, which means whatever's happening in a new patch will likely be the new Friday event. One thing to kind of mention real quick, if you haven't already, is one of these new features will be related to doing Explore. There'll be new mimics within the patch, and I believe they occur both on the Explore for when you hit the mini-boss, as well as another chance at the mythic section, basically for the smaller and bigger mimics that can end up occurring. And with that being said, it is a good idea, if you haven't already, to possibly consider getting every single kingdom to 3 out of 4 battles, so that you can end up rolling for these when the patch ends up coming, most likely tomorrow. So when that does happen, likely around 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is the time they normally end up doing their patch or so, you would be able to go and pretty much be able to go farm them a lot quicker. This also doesn't end up reducing any of your shards, since you actually haven't claimed them yet, because you still get the full amount when you end up clearing out the mini-boss. You could, of course, keep leaving the mini-boss to farm up infinite shards, but you're getting half as much each time, whereas if you leave them at 3 out of 4 when you end up, or even just 4 out of 4, though I'm not sure you'll be able to get the roll for the mimic, but if you leave them all at 3 out of 4, you'd still get the full amount of shards, and you just quickly go through all of them and get a bunch of extra stuff immediately as soon as the new patch ends up coming out. So worth potentially considering. We don't know how frequent they'll be or anything like that, but it is one preemptive thing you can do if you want to prepare for the next patch that is likely tomorrow night. Anyways, with that being said, let's go over everything else that's going on this week, with, of course, the first one being the new troop. Comes in with a bunch of brown, yellow Arcanes for 300 each. As far as the troop itself, it deals some damage to 3 random enemies with an independent 50% chance to stun them, so basically every single thing it hits, it will have a chance of placing a stun on them. This is a pretty underwhelming troop. There's already other low rarity things that can end up stunning pretty well, so using this on your team not necessarily going to be usable in pretty much any situation. Even in something like Arena, you don't really need stun. In early game, you already have other options that can stun. Maybe if you had absolutely none, but there are some pretty easy faction ones that have like a 4-time stun with an explosion and stuff like that, so you're probably not going to really need it. It also is one of the wish gem creations that do not have any way to board control, so the ones that have a little bit of board control, like destroying to some degree or anything like that, they tend to be at least somewhat okay usable, because when we don't have the wish gems falling from the sky, they might be some of the only ways to really do so. However, this doesn't even have any kind of board destroy, so these wish gems it's going to be creating, it itself cannot destroy, whereas all the troops that can do it on themselves already are a bit more beneficial. So basically, this thing's going to be pretty much useless. You might still want to get it metaled, though, because any kind of beast summon or transform does indeed end up having it as an option, because it is indeed a beast. But aside from that, it's really underwhelming, and not ever going to be put on any starting team. You might just get transformed into it on accident ever so occasionally. Anyways, as far as the event key drop table this week, of course, it is a Pan's Vale event week. So with that being said, if we go over to troops, go over to the Kingdom of the Pan's Vale, pretty much everything here is available, with the following exceptions. The main ones being that you cannot end up getting, of course, the 4 faction troops, which are all of the ones from the Warrens, so any of those you cannot end up getting. And aside from that, everything else you actually can. There's nothing else that is locked out of it this week. So for the most part, as far as the mythics and everything go in this kingdom, there are some that are worthwhile. Of course, we have things like Wild Queen. I personally feel like I haven't been using her as much in Guild Wars, though she definitely is a good Guild War option when she doesn't miss. Has a really high attack steal, gives the attack to your first slot, which kind of sets you up to win. It can backfire a little bit because you are feeding the enemy a lot of green, so you generally don't want to use her on Green Guild War Day, because of course if they're using Book, they're going to be countering you pretty hard, so you definitely don't want to do it on that day ideally. But on Purple and Brown, you can still get away with her pretty well if you want to end up utilizing her, as the enemy would likely have less of a need to use green unless they're really specifically trying to hard counter her. But a good overall option for Guild Wars, which makes her decent. Just a good skull spammer in general as well. Pan, not so much. It is a way to disorient the enemy team, and one of the stronger hitting ones that is capable of doing so, but it's a really high mana cost. If it was like something like 20, I could see this being a little more viable. It's 7 Impervious, if nothing else. It might get used on some Impervious teams if they want a reorientation method. However, generally that's just going to be done with hero using a really tanky hero class, or a stealthy hero class using something like a rope dart, whereas this mythic tends to not really get used much compared to just a rope dart hero class. So unfortunately, you'd mostly be looking for Wild Queen if you're going to be trying to open event keys here. For the most part, I would would say skip unless you're really looking for Kingdom Stars or you really want to get your hands on something like a Wild Queen, as everything here is pretty average in most situations and not really many must-haves that you're going to need. So, and one of the better things within the kingdom, you can actually just get from the faction itself. You just with some shards, that being Luna with its amount of explosions, as well as having a decent AoE, not one of the better ones in the game, but it's definitely in the better half of troops that could do it, as well as being pretty accessible due to it being from a faction legend, which makes it a lot easier to obtain than a normal legend, since you could just get it by throwing shards at any of the portals within the underworld, specifically the Warrens all the way over here. You can end up getting her and everything else within the drop table. Anyways, aside from that, we do have, of course, our standard ward events. Main thing to note with the ward event this week, we do have spell damage, so that's always nice. Fortunately, it's not spells and skulls, which are even nicer. But basically, it's in 3 sets of 2s. The main thing that you want to prioritize is Sky Goat. Just always take Sky Goat, and you're probably taking the right room. It's basically rarity order, but prioritize taking Sky Goat. The 2 mythic rooms do have a slightly different amount of points. However, it won't really matter, because if you're seeing a mythic room, you'll probably just take it anyways. However, Sky Goat is highest priority, and then the next goes to the just rarity order. So just make sure always take Sky Goat, even though it's an ultra rare that looks exactly the same as the other ultra rare, but is worth way more. So make sure to take that. And then your second priority is just rarity order, starting from mythics, working your way down. So just prioritize taking Sky Goats, and you should be perfectly fine. And that's pretty much the entirety of the ward event. Pretty straightforward for the most part. As far as weekly things that we have going on this week, we do have a Tuesday for the Warrens. Oddly enough, this is a bit of an interesting one if you need green-yellow arcanes, as this is the only faction in the entire game where you end up getting arcanes for completing out the final battle. So if you happen to not have like infinite green-yellow arcanes yet, you might want to consider doing this faction some, because every single time you end up completing out to the final treasure room, you will end up getting arcanes, specifically of the green-yellow variety. You'll never get a different one, just simply green-yellow. So if you are needing green-yellow arcanes, you can pretty much get as many as you need tomorrow simply by participating in the faction event. So that is one thing to consider if you still end up needing them for any troops. Anyway, aside from that, we just have the Pan's Veil pet on Wednesday, nothing too special there. Thursday, we have the Bard hero class. Overall, pretty underwhelming hero class. Used to be used, I feel, a bit more, but as more and more hero classes came into the game, it just became a little bit more obsolete, to the point that I don't really feel like it's ran for almost anything these days, just because a lot of hero classes do what it does better in different ways. So it tends to not excel at any particular thing enough to justify using it in most situations, unless you're building like a pure wild folk team and a few other really niche situations. And aside from that, Friday I have no clue what. We are going to be getting a patch most likely this Tuesday, as there is currently no Friday event planned at this exact moment in time. So we'll just kind of have to wait and see what ends up happening with the patch that is likely happening tomorrow, and see what that ends up bringing for this weekend, as we currently do not know. But that will be updated likely when the patch ends up hitting. Anyways, as far as Soulforge is concerned, we have basically nothing of value here. Yagwei, if you're going... I generally don't advise getting legends, because you'll have every legend way before you have every mythic, though this is one of a few legends where it is decent enough to maybe consider getting. It's actually the first legend I ever fully medaled. He's really good in pretty much every regard. He deals a lot of damage to the first 2 enemies. He ends up boosting it based on his life, so the higher his life, the more damage he does. He gets to steal magic, and he does so in a way where he does it preemptively. So let's say, of course, he's stealing 4 magic from 2 different things. So not only is he stealing 4 magic from 2 different things, but it retroactively gives it to him prior to his damage calculation, meaning that he'll be, assuming you actually steal the 4 magic from both, you'll be getting 8 additional damage, and that 8 additional damage is technically 16 additional damage because you're hitting 2 different enemies. So it does preemptively adjust for the magic that you're stealing. It also transforms all purple to red. That ends up giving it a pretty decent amount of mana accumulation, while being able to feed directly back into itself. This is also commonly used with Queen Titania as well, not only to give Fairy Fire for 50% extra spell damage, but also because you can utilize all those reds to simply just hit straight into an extra turn with her. But if you ever get a Yagwei that does a purple to red convert, gets all of its mana back, and then casts again, you're pretty much in a PvP-like situation, generally double killing whatever he touches. So in one single combo cast of a Yagwei into himself, you basically just made the battle from a 4 versus 4 into a 4 versus 2, when he works properly, that is. Obviously, he doesn't always have alignment like that, but when he does, he is pretty devastating, and definitely worthwhile. Among one of the better legends available within the game from a damage PvP-like perspective, if you still want to go like the whole spell damage route. He's also used in arguably one of the best non-mythic legendary teams, or, you know, a non-mythic viable PvP team in the game, which is mostly like the Yagwe Queen of Tanya combo. But anyways, he also gets to steal some life every single time when he matches red, which not only synergizes with the fact that he creates red, not only synergizes with the fact that he boost ratios, but he's also going to be creating all the red. So he basically has like 3 different angles of benefit, because he has the boost ratio from it, he has the creation of it and all that. So he's getting a lot of value from pretty much everything he has. So pretty solid. And it's one of the rare instances where if you don't have this legend yet, and you have the resources for it, you might want to consider getting it this week. As far as weapons, nothing really too special, though. If there was any one I would say to craft, is probably Yasmin's Pride. I don't feel like I use it that much these days. However, it's definitely not a bad weapon. It eliminates all armor from an enemy, and then gives all allies a bunch of life. In very high locations where, you know, stats are super high, when there's a lot of armor to tier, this gives you a lot of HP. So anything that has a really high HP boost ratio, most notably Catcher's the Bull, but literally anything that has a good HP ratio. The one exception might be the Sunbird, because when the Sunbird casts, it actually gets rid of all of its HP because it ends up dying and coming back, so you only get the boost ratio for 1 poke. But anything that doesn't die that has a HP boost ratio for its damage can end up utilizing this weapon pretty well. So it's definitely worth considering, and out of everything in Soulforge, I would highly prioritize having Yasmin's Pride if you don't already have it, as is by far the most highest priority of anything that will be available this week. So definitely worth considering if you can get the resources for it, assuming you don't already have it laying around. Otherwise, pretty much everything else is for completion's sake. Nothing really too special available this week in the Soulforge. Anyways, let's go over now to a bunch of teams for everything throughout the week, all of which are in the description below if you want to copy paste any of them, of course. So as far as the world event, we do have access to Beatrix. Beatrix is a wild folk, and it will basically be the primary thing that you'll be utilizing. One other thing to consider underneath wild folk, which is really broken when there's extra spell damage, or probably your main way going forward if you're playing with a, or if you're earlier on in the game, is go get your Blade Dancer fully traded and just simply cast Blade Dancer. Blade Dancer does a boost ratio based on all the armor, but when you have extra spell damage, this is absolutely devastating. You can generally win in a single cast. You will eventually reach a point where it does not win. However, Queen Beatrix is kind of there to solve that issue for you. But yeah, you can even just center around just a complete full mana accumulation into a Blade Dancer, which is kind of like what this other one does a little bit more, where literally our only combat option is our Blade Dancer, and every single thing around it is a mana accumulator. This, of course, being shown in a bit of a cheaper way, using all low rarity options. Essence of Evil you get from 250 wins on the Plague Lord hero class, that you can always use a different mana accumulating weapon if you want. That is the better one, and is still very accessible due to just needing a bunch of wins on a class. Trickster you get from the Warrens, which you might already be throwing some shards at anyways this week for the event week, but if you haven't already got him, he just explodes a bunch of gems, which is the main thing that you'll be doing. He also has a little switch thing, but you're mostly using him for his explosion combined with his 75% mana start, which when you have enchant will basically just be like a Harpy Mage, where it just automatically gets its mana up, so that's kind of convenient. And then we of course have the Plague Rat, which again is just another mana accumulator. You could go for another Blade Dancer or another damage source of some sort. However, this one is centered around a single Blade Dancer, but you could adjust it based on if you do have a higher rarity option that you can end up putting here. Just make sure to try to keep this as low a rarity as possible. Also, the Plague Rat is simply from Dark Pits, so if you end up doing the Dark Pits faction, throwing some Chaos Shards there, you'll end up getting him due to him being a nice little ultra rare as far as low rarity. And the only one you'd have to get manually if you don't already have it is Blade Dancer. The easiest way to get him this week is because this is an event week, you can simply get him in event keys. So if you throw down around 10 event keys, you're probably going to get a copy of him. It probably shouldn't take too many more than 10. So definitely do that. You can also, I think I already bought them out unfortunately today, but if you do need 10, if you go to your resources all the way to the left here, in that invisible void, you will see a offer for 150 glory to buy 10 event keys. If you don't already do that every single week, a good idea to do so. I do it kind of out of habit, which is why it's not there. For whatever reason, just disappears after you buy it already. But normally in that blank void all the way to the left, if you go to resources thing, you will see 180 glory for one event key, and you can do it 10 times per week. And that's the perfect way to go get that troop if you don't already have it. You just need to get 1,800 glory, which you get simply from playing PvP if you don't already have it laying around already. Anyways, let's keep going over the teams then. So as far as other things that we have going on, as far as the faction, you're restricted to green and yellow. I just simply showed a rowing team here that you can end up cycling through the entire path. Ends up working out pretty well, and it's all you would pretty much really need. Of course, you could go more so down the yellow route, but it ends up getting the job done, so I figured we just show that. As far as the pure faction, there are 2 different ways that you can run this depending on how you want to go about it. Either 4 Lunas or 3 Lunas with the bunny. So the bunny ends up creating 7 yellow gems and then charming a random enemy. The most relevant thing about that is that it creates 7 yellow gems while having a 75% mana start, which is pretty convenient. The main gimmick of this team is Luna ends up exploding a random gem when matching yellow gems, and of course the bunny creates yellow. So your main goal here is to basically just keep taking yellow. Not only is this feeding into Luna, but you'll be getting 3 explosions because it does stack every single time you end up taking a yellow gem, and that's a lot of mana accumulation. So you basically take a yellow, you get 3 explosions every single time. That gets your Lunas up, you keep casting Lunas. This is a little bit of a luck-based kingdom, though not like a super luck-based one. She has a wide variety of either being insanely good or kind of average based on what she actually does, because basically the main part of her ability is just a standard AoE, so you can kind of look at her as a standard AoE troop. However, she does have one caveat to that, and that she inflicts 1 to 2 random status effects to all enemies or to all allies. So either 1 or 2 positive ones to all allies, or 1 or 2 negative ones to all enemies. Obviously, this could be really good if it does something like Fairy Fire and like Death Mark or something to the enemy, or like Fairy Fire Silence, or any kind of like good combination. And of course, it could be really good when it does beneficial things to your allies, like a barrier enchant onto the entire team. However, it can also do something like pretty useless, like apply just only poison to all enemies, or maybe just apply enrage to all your allies when you're mostly just going to be using your first slot anyways. So it can end up doing things that aren't as beneficial, but it's one of the luck things you have to kind of factor in. And it's not super luck based compared to some factions, but it is definitely a factor to consider when you're going through it if you are going to be doing that for tomorrow's faction event. And aside from that, since I can't show anything for the Friday event because we don't quite know what it is yet, so I can't make any teams for it, we do have the Bard class event this Thursday, restricted to specifically Bards from Pan's Vale, or sorry, I mean specifically Wild Folk from Pan's Vale. An easiest way to do this is to spam Finesse into a weapon that uses purple, because it ends up gaining a purple link, so you could feed that into any purple weapon you wish. It doesn't have to be Black Manacles. The Black Manacles is the most accessible one, and a pretty decent one at that as well. But it also gets to start with full mana, so you get to deal some damage to an enemy equal to their attack. So as you keep going deeper, it even does more damage, and you also get some life as a result of that as well, so you're basically never going to die. So overall, one of the easier Thursday events, possibly even a good one for going for a leaderboard, though there might also be other people going for leaderboard, so who knows. Plus, we might be having a patch very likely this week, so you might be prioritizing the new content in that more so than more so than the class event. But if you're just doing the free battles, this will be perfectly fine, and even if you're not, this should be able to go pretty far as well. Sometimes it doesn't work both ways. I mostly just show the one for the free one because I assume most people don't bother going for the leaderboard, as it is pretty bad value to spend any amount of gems on class events. I highly don't advise doing it. It's pretty much a waste unless you're going all the way for leaderboard, but even this can go all the way to the top of leaderboard. You might adjust it slightly just to get better AoE damage, just to kill a bit quicker. But overall, for the free battles, it'll get the job done. Anyways, guys, that will wrap it up for now. We will be streaming all the chapter tasks as we always do tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll also be messing around with the new full troop that's coming out off the campaign pass, because that's actually going to be available if you bought the bigger pass. It's mostly just a weird shuffle option that shuffles not only the board but the team. He's okay if he gets an extra turn, but really bad if he doesn't, so he's probably not going to be that viable, but he's a fun troop to mess around with if nothing else. So we'll be doing that, all the chapter tasks, and probably setting up for next patch, as while it's not 100% confirmed, it is exceedingly likely to end up being tomorrow. And if you want to prep for that, as I mentioned earlier, get every single Explore 12 Kingdom to 3 out of 4, so you can maximize as many shards as you can going immediately into the next mode in order to see those mimics that will should be appearing in the Explorers there. And you stop a little bit beforehand just to make sure that the mimics actually can load in. Otherwise, if you're already all the way there, you might not get the mimics loaded in. We don't really know for sure until the patch actually happens. So it's a good idea to just keep it at 3 out of 4 if you can help to do so. If you want to prepare for next patch, not too big a deal if you don't, so you can simply just farm during the patch, not that big a deal. But if you wanted to like preemptively prepare for it, that would be your best bet. 3 out of 4, Explore 12 on every single kingdom. Anyways, guys, I'll catch you guys later. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I hope you all have a wonderful week. Goodbye, everyone.